I'm Agent Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Did you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Sol Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Good evening, everyone. This is Smiles Lewis. Welcome to another live edition of Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. This is the weekly live, most of the time, the news and media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit charity group, the Anomaly Archives, aka Scientific Anomaly Institute. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be part 2 of our 2024 year-end review. Last week, we covered the first 4 months of last year, and we'll see how far we get tonight. Man, there's just so much that happened last year. It's pretty crazy. But I'm going to try to dive right in. But, you know, there's just so much going on right now. I can't even begin to not restrain myself for talking about what's currently in the news. Of course, I do want to alert folks to what's going on with our Patreon next week. On Wednesday, January 22nd, we are going to be hosting Chris Rutkowski, that Canadian researcher, long-standing investigator into all things anomalous. And he's going to be talking about alien abductions in a talk called Abduction Transduction. Really curious to hear what he has to say. He's a very critical mind that has focused his laser gaze on all things from cryptozoology to Forteana to ufology, paranormal phenomena and whatnot. But mainly he's a UFO guy. And if you follow the links to our Patreon or go on over to the anomalyarchives.org website, you can find information about him, links to his information about his books, his research, his blogs, his research websites, that sort of thing. And I really hope you'll join us and join the Patreon. We could really use your help. It's you can subscribe for any amount, or you can subscribe for free. There's various ways that you can keep in contact with the Anomaly Archives and stay in the loop as to what's coming up at any given time. So yeah, we got that lecture coming up, Abduction Transduction with Chris Rutkowski. And so what is in the news? My gosh. So it was so terrible, the news that happened on New Year's Day, the reports of the 2 apparent attacks here in the United States, one in New Orleans, one in Las Vegas. Very distinct and different incidents, and some people, of course, have tried to see if there's possible connections there. But I did want to talk about this individual involved in the Las Vegas incident, Matthew Livelsberger. This is too much to dive into, but suffice to say, this is very, very strange indeed. It is unfortunately not unusual for former military to commit suicide or to sometimes lash out in violent ways. And we would hope that anybody having suicidal ideation would seek professional help, contact all the various resources that are available out there. But what makes the Livelsberger attack unique are the messages that were left on his phone, but more specifically, the email sent to individuals trying to reach out to certain media, former military folks like Ryan, who has this very popular show, and broke the story about the emails that were sent to this other fellow shoemate, this other former military guy. And in that email are a variety of strange and interesting and some verifiable claims and some not verifiable claims. But suffice to say that there was information there that seemed to indicate a source for the mystery drones over New Jersey, and connecting them to exotic, mysterious, secret propulsion systems. Basically, this idea of some kind of anti-gravity drones being used by the Chinese, but also possibly being used by us, and the danger of this as a weapon, and all kinds of scary information there in his last words, both on the messages on his phone and in this email to various military media personalities. And why I find interesting is, at the same time that this is happening, you've got people like Stephen Greer and his disclosure movement, Media Machine, very much in the spotlight, getting a lot of interviews and saying that disclosure is imminent. And in fact, he appears to be, as a friend said recently, doubling down on his prediction that in the next week, before Monday, we'll see, there will be some sort of disclosure event from other whistleblowers inside these various legacy programs, including these secret black sites that are allegedly involved in either reverse engineering and or operations of tech derived from analyzing quote unquote UFO UAP technology, alien technology, in the words of Stephen Greer. Greer and his ilk are no strangers to making such prophetic predictions, but very often nothing ever happens. And so I am not holding my breath. However, it does feel, given the political state in this country, that there may be some other weird shoe about to drop. So take that all for what it's worth. But I would encourage folks, if you're interested, to go to that debrief.org link that covers some of this information, new developments in the Tesla Cybertruck explosion investigation. And there are other mainstream media outlets are covering this as well, though, of course, places like the debrief.org have a much more history experience with UFO phenomena and that mythos that this part of the sad man's tale are entangled with. So please consider looking into that. It may or may not prove important. But I am going to jump here to something else new that's not what's in the list of things that we're going to go through tonight, Victor. I did want to comment about the sad news about the LA fires, claiming the Theosophical Society building and its archives. The website wildhunt.org has reported on this. LA fires claim Theosophical Society building and archives. Los Angeles, fierce wildfires continue to rage out of control across the greater Los Angeles area, resulting in at least 5 confirmed deaths. Of course, it's dramatically increased since then. But sadly, this historic facility housing all kinds of theosophical-oriented materials has been lost. And while I and many others might criticize the ideas espoused by the grandmother of theosophical thought, Helen Blavatsky, and some of the negative influences that a theosophical inquiry have propagated, it pains me to know that archives such as these have been lost in such a terrible, terrible tragedy. It's just goes towards how important it is that these things be preserved and, if possible, scanned and made into digital format. And when they are stored and preserved in their physical form, that they're protected in as safe an environment as possible. Moving right along, another interesting article from a fellow Texas researcher friend, Chester Moore, over at highercalling.net. There had been unfortunately, a cougar was accidentally killed when it was struck by a police vehicle in East Texas last month, in December of 2024. This is highly unusual, but interestingly enough, Chester recovered hard drives from an old computer of his that had photographs that he had received from investigations he was doing back over 12 plus years ago in 2010, 2011, that involve the sightings of these big cats, these cougars, these mountain lions in Texas. And as Chester's, as a avid outdoorsman, has often contradicted the authorities' statements as to what types of wild animals are and are not present in Texas. This is another example where he's contradicting that and believes that there are cougars further west throughout Texas than is being accepted by the mainstream authorities. But it made me happy to know that he had recovered these photographs and has now been posting them online. And if you go on this webpage, you can see some of those images. These are not misidentifications of feral cats. These are, or bobcats. These are mountain lions. These are cougars. And if you follow the link, you can see, sadly, the poor animal that was struck by the police vehicle. The officer holds up the body of the animal, so fair warning. But it does give you a sense of just how big these animals are. But always excited to hear about Chester's work with his higher calling wildlife efforts. So, well, note to volunteer Victor, the stuff about AI ufologist and the Elliott Museum, I'm going to try to save that for later. That'll tie into something later. Maybe we'll see. And so, there's a couple of news articles before we jump into May 2024 and onwards. There were some other headlines I forgot to mention. And for January 2024, and actually this I only found out about just recently. I was sad to learn of the passing of Tracy Torme. The HollywoodReporter.com has covered his passing back a year ago. Tracy Torme, Sliders co-creator and Star Trek The Next Generation writer, dies at 64. The second son of singer Mel Torme. He started out in comedy on SCTV and Saturday Night Live, then moved to drama projects including Fire in the Sky, I Am Legend, and Carnival. So I've told this story, said this many times. I really admired Tracy Torme. He was very interested in the UFO phenomenon. He was friends with people in the UFO field. He was friends with Travis Walton, thus his creating the Fire in the Sky script and the movie. But I was really impressed with him as Fire in the Sky was about to be released when he presented an open letter to the UFO community apologizing for the way Travis Walton's encounters were misprofiled in that dramatization, in that movie, in that science fiction horror film. And it literally was a case where the film company was concerned about copyright infringement because the entities seemed so similar to those from other movies, other books, other real quote unquote stories. And they also, I think, wanted to spice things up. And thus you get such a horrific portrayal of Travis Walton's experiences that are not accurate at all, even while the rest of the film around that horror centerpiece are actually pretty accurate. But that really impressed me that he was so direct and vocal. And everything I ever heard about him was that he was a good soul. And it's sad to see him go. But yeah, he had quite the career. So much good science fiction came out of his efforts. So fair travels, Tracy Torme. Also in January of last year, there was, of course, and I can't believe I overlooked this, and it seems more relevant than ever now that we are perhaps we just got through the drone invasion of December 2024, and these claims of this Livelsberger individual who ended his own life and told of tales of a dangerous coming interaction between our anti-gravity drones, presumably derived from alien reverse engineered technology, fighting these other foreign agent drones over New Jersey in that area. Of course, in January of 2024, it was the faked alien invasion in Florida. And I only recently saw the video that we posted called I Faked an Alien Invasion in Florida, which features an invasion, the efforts of some social media guy. I'd never even heard of this kid. And it doesn't address what originally caused the panic at the mall, where the footage that pretty much freaked out everybody, where it showed an aerial shot of the mall in Florida where there were just so many cop cars flooding in. And the mainstream explanation was that this was teens that were fighting, and then firecrackers and fireworks were ignited, and that there was a fear of a first person shooter, a mass casualty event, as well as possible mass robbery event. It still seems kind of strange to a lot of people that there was such of this massive police response to those things, but honestly, that doesn't surprise me. Those are the kinds of things that one would expect a large police response to. But you can find links to also MiamiNewTimes.com. Florida alien invasion mastermind reveals all. Now, I don't know. It's pretty silly. It's just somebody basically creating a social media panic via social media and leafleting and some creative ideas. But it is an interesting case study if one wants to ponder how difficult or easy it is to create a panic. And, so many of these things are easy to then wonder about if there was something else going on behind them than this mainstream narrative of this individual. Anthony Poe took a bold stab at social media BS artistry after the Bayside Marketplace alien uproar. Also, yes, of course, the factcheck.afp.com, Miami police refute alien invasion hoax. No surprise there. Again, just giving the standard response. But I just wanted to bring that up in the context of where we are in January of 2025 and the, constant drumbeat of, disclosure, it's coming. But then when you have people like Greer, who does have a very wide audience, saying that disclosure is imminent and saying that more whistleblowers are about to come forward. And I don't have any links to show you this, but there is a new quote unquote whistleblower. This Randy Anderson, who's done an interview with Jesse Michaels of American Alchemy. And Professor Simon chiming in with saying a contact of his has a very similar story that seems to be almost the same kind of experience as this military fellow, Randy Anderson. But these are the kinds of alleged whistleblowers that Greer is saying are imminent, to use the Lou Elizondo book title. Okay, jumping into May 2024, the big thing for me in May was learning about references to the Kona Blue name, this idea that the OSAP and ATIP folks were trying to put forth a new reverse engineering program, a new acclimatization program for the public, that they wanted to transition, presumably the ATIP OSAP program, into some kind of program to desensitize the public to this idea and to put forth a prospective special access program and start educating the public. But of course, George Knapp was on the case, and over at the 8newsnow.com, what is Kona Blue, the proposed Las Vegas UFO technology program unveiled by George Knapp. And of course, then also in May was the fallout from, again, former Aero director Sean Kirkpatrick ranting about the dangers of UFO belief. We had our friend Red Pill Junkie Miguel Romero writing over at the Daily Grail, much better publication in my estimation. A former Aero director, Sean Kirkpatrick, UFO religions are a potential threat to national security. And this basically saying, oh, UFOs aren't a threat. We're not worried about what's in the skies, but we are worried about the beliefs of these people. And this is one of those places where I do not disagree with him. I just feel like he's sidestepping the issue of what he's really was there to do. But maybe that's exactly what he was there to do, was just to deflect from the public getting the truth. Well, also that month of May 2024 was the passing of a famous UFO researcher, Bruce S. Maccabee. He was an optical physicist and a very interesting character. You can find a bunch of links about him over at the Anomaly Archives website, where we've got a page with information about him. And I got to say, Bruce Maccabee, I said this during one of the May shows, that he was important because he seemed to be, he was a reputable, most of the time, analyst of UFO photographs. People really wanted him to give his mark of approval on this or that UFO case. But he became very controversial when he endorsed the Ed Walters Gulf Breeze photographs. These were photos that were happening in the midst of a flap of UFO sightings happening in Gulf Breeze, Florida, right around which Pensacola area, where there are a number of military bases. And whatever the true nature of that, a lot of people just felt intuitively that it was a scam. And then there were indications that the Ed Walters fellow was kind of a hoaxer, practical joker, but Bruce Maccabee endorsed the photographs, saying that they were real. And this really surprised a lot of people and made them question whether this was perhaps, as some have said, an example of someone like, say, Bill Moore back in the 80s, who had perhaps agreed to run cover for some particular case, perhaps as a quid pro quo exchange from somebody on the inside asking that of them, somebody in the military or intelligence community. And as so many UFO researchers are interested in getting information out of the government, they often think, well, if I do something for them, they'll do something for me. But as Paul Bennewitz and others would tell you, you can't trust them. All right, moving right along to cryptids alive, out-of-place animals, and more. Yeah, there was a very strange incident that happened here in Central Texas. Viral video of shark caught in Guadalupe River leads to response from city of New Braunfels. As far as I could tell, this was fake. And the authorities were like, there's no danger of these sharks ending up in the Guadalupe River, even though the particular shark that I think was in the video is known to be able to swim in both fresh and salt water. But yeah, out-of-place animal. Meanwhile, over from foxnews.com, fisherman hooks prehistoric 200-pound alligator snapping turtle before catching monster alligator gar. In this case, the fisherman rightly took a picture of this giant. Now look at that thing. That thing is huge. Man, I mean, that thing's got to be 100 years old. I don't know. And released it. Thank goodness. That thing should be allowed to live, man. Look at those claws. They're just scary. But yeah, catch and release, and then also caught this massive gar, which is not, I don't know if it's a record holder, record breaker, but man, still a big fish. That's a really big fish. Meanwhile, another example of bad ufology. That's Jaime Maussan's mummy troubles continued. Authorities raid UFO museum, seize supposed alien mummy's foot and other artifacts. As reported last year on this and all the other shenanigans, nobody should take anything Jaime Maussan says without a boulder the size of Giant Rock and Joshua Tree, because you can't trust him. He's just endorsed so many hoaxes and is just so unscrupulous. And he just seems to be preoccupied with labeling mummies as being alien. And as I reported about the involvement of the Roswell Slides Research Group back in 2015, he was making hay out of the mummified remains of a Native American child. I mean, this guy is low. Meanwhile, over at Fizz.org, rise of paranoia and conspiracy going more mainstream. Weather wars. Yes, Brazil's catastrophic weather spawns spat of conspiracy theories. This is just, again, the recurring theme of one of the big things about 2024 was we hoped that there might be a waning of conspiracy belief, but it just rises and rises. And partly, I think that for good reason, but I think there's just been a rise in lack of critical thinking, a lowering of critical thinking skills. And meanwhile, other related stories, the sfgate.com, Bay Area city orders scientists to stop controversial cloud brightening experiment. Now, this is exactly the kind of thing that gives people that believe in weather modification. I certainly believe in weather modification. The kind of ammunition that's like, well, hey, could there be weather wars going on? I mean, we've got all these examples of patents for modifying the atmosphere with electromagnetic energy, like HARP. You've got the old standard of cloud seeding. If you followed the antics of Wilhelm Reich, about cloud busting and his weather modification efforts. And boy, the government thought he was so dangerous that they locked him up and burned all his books. And then that same month, we had more public social media panics, this time in Las Vegas. So we're back to Las Vegas. Las Vegas alien video shows at least 2 beings using a cloaking device. Quote, I'm opening it up to peer review, says the lawyer in this foxnews.com articles. There's a couple of different ones. Las Vegas alien videos previously missed details proves authenticity, quote unquote, expert says. You can't deny it. Well, there did seem to be the possibility that this family was really scared and spooked by something. I'm just not ever likely to put my money on actual aliens, as much as I believe they are out there and probably have been here, and heck, they may be in this room with me right now. Oh, also, AI deep fakes that simulate dead people risk haunting relatives, researchers warn the Independent. And okay, I might as well play this now. So this just talks about the idea of, obviously, I think this is the kind of technology, AI, that recreates your deceased loved ones and allows you to interact with those that you've lost. It could be a good, helpful tool in limited amounts for grief mitigation, but it's opening us up to some very weird and strange areas. And this gets back to the Elliott Museum article that just came out that I was alluding to. UFOs crash into the Elliott Museum, WPTV, also Coast to Coast AM, new UFO exhibit opens at Florida Museum. But a friend of ours, I'm going to try to share some of these videos that our friend Jim of the Paramania group posted. So this museum features 3 full body, I don't know if they're technically holograms, but visual AI recreations of 1 living and 2 deceased UFO researchers. And this one is Stephen Greer.
CE5 stands for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. It's a protocol for human-initiated contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Through meditation and coherent thought sequencing, individuals can attempt to communicate with these beings. CE5 emphasizes peaceful and conscious interaction, highlighting our potential for connection beyond Earth.
So that's the Greer one. They got the voice right. Of course, Greer's been around longer than the other 2 because he's still alive. So the other ones include, this is supposed to be J. Allen Hynek, and the look of him seems off, and the voice doesn't seem very right to my ear. and he's got the pipe in his mouth, which he was known for, but it just seems to not work for me. But
tell me about Paul Benowitz.
Paul Benowitz was a businessman in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who became deeply involved in UFO research in the late 1970s and 1980s. He believed he intercepted electronic signals from UFOs near Kirtland Air Force Base. His claims led to a complex and controversial story involving interactions with U.S. government agencies. Some suggest Benowitz was misled by disinformation, possibly as part of a counterintelligence effort. This case highlights the complexities and potential risks involved in UFO research, especially when it intersects with national security interests.
And then last, they have, this is supposed to be Stanton Friedman. I don't think it really looks like him, and I don't think it sounds like him, sadly.
Tell me about Betty and Barney Hill.
Betty and Barney Hill were an American couple who reported being abducted by extraterrestrials in a rural portion of New Hampshire from September 19th to 20, 1961. Their account is considered the first widely publicized report of an alien abduction in the United States. Let me be clear, their story is quite intriguing. The Hills' experience included a detailed account of being taken aboard a spacecraft and subjected to various examinations. Betty also described seeing a star map, which later became a point of debate when it was compared to known star systems. The fit of the Hill Fish star maps was hotly debated in the December 1974 edition of Astronomy magazine. I, along with others, defended the statistical validity of the match. This case remains one of the most famous and well-documented UFO abduction stories. It's a fascinating topic that continues to spark discussions and investigations even today.
Very interesting. I'm so glad Jim made those recordings. I had not heard about that until he posted about it. But yeah, it gets to this issue of wrangling with this new AI generated, and those clearly are very kind of stilted in the images, but it's only going to get better and better. It's going to be creepier and creepier. Real uncanny valley kind of stuff, as they say. Okay, some more out of place animals in the month of May. Big cat DNA publicly confirmed for first time in the United Kingdom. Now, this is a perfect balance to the articles I was mentioning by my friend Chester Moore at his highercalling.net. For a long time, there have been the sightings of big black cats and other big cats in the British countryside. And now there has been some scientific research that seems to indicate, yes, indeed, they found DNA, both in the form of hair and other bodily fluids on dead sheep and hair on fencing. So we've got these two different articles, one at singular14.com, the other at discoverwildlife.com. DNA confirms this is a big cat roaming. There is a big cat roaming the British countryside. And this is just one of those cases where the cryptozoologists were finally proven right, thankfully, due to some real research and some good science. So moving into June, it was, of course, June of 2024 when the Anomaly Archives launched our new Patreon. And as I mentioned, we've got Chris Rutkowski coming up this month, next week. But so far, we've had a number of different speakers, including Greg Bishop, Joshua Cutchin, Joe Green, Professor Wham, and Brent Rains. And we've also posted some rare audio lectures that had been done for the Anomaly Archives years ago that had not been previously publicly available. You can find out more about that again over at patreon.com/Anomaly Archives or at the anomalyarchives.org website. So in June of 2024, we had more Texas kangaroos on the loose, out of place animals yet again. This one, a Houston Chronicle, chron.com. Is this kangaroo the most wanted fugitive in Texas? Kangaroo evades Texas cops after daring escape in viral video. Yeah, as I mentioned, I guess Texans really must feel an affinity. I guess this is our connection to Australia. I don't know why ranchers would want this, but it seems like folks really want kangaroos to be in Texas. And as I said in previous shows, there was even a baby one running wild down the street about half a mile from my house here in South Austin. a few years back. It's a very strange thing. But June of 2024 also ushered in the return of the cryptoterrestrials as a topic of discussion. This paper that was released on ResearchGate called The Cryptoterrestrial Hypothesis, a case for scientific openness to a concealed earthly explanation for UAP. This has gotten some attention, and it just seemed like there were several other references throughout the year, ranging from Hal Puthoff and others to this idea of the cryptoterrestrial hypothesis, which before was called more like the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis. John Keel popularized that phraseology, ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, and people like Mac Tonnies, who passed far too young, wrote about the reframing of it as the cryptoterrestrial hypothesis, the idea that there's some other intelligent species here with us. And I have always felt, well, not when I was youngest and got into UFOs for the first time, I was very much enthralled with the extraterrestrial hypothesis. It just seems the most obvious and of our time. But when you look at the UFO data and the various hypotheses over the years, it just seems like whatever this phenomena is, it has been with us as long as we've been here on this planet. And so to think of it as anything other than terrestrial like us doesn't make sense to me. But then you also had coverage like Fox 7 Austin.com, aliens may be living among us disguised as humans, Harvard researchers claim, where they were talking again about this cryptoterrestrial hypothesis paper. No surprise, Nick Pope getting some more media attention that he loves so dearly. Moving right along, we were excited to learn a little too late that there was a Saul Foundation event here in Austin, and our good friend Daniel Allen Jones, who should be a guest here very, very soon, had some pictures to share online about that. Let me go ahead. Oh, you've got them there. Yeah, so thank you, Victor. This event happened downtown at the Capitol Factory and was titled Our Evolving Understanding of Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. And man, I wish I'd heard about this in time and been able to go, but Gary Nolan was there, founder of the Saul Foundation, and Peter Scottish, and also Austin's own Hal Puthoff, and there's Daniel in all those pictures. It's great to see that. But hopefully we'll get some more Saul Foundation events here in Austin. That would be awesome. Maybe we can do something with them. But the other thing, as I've said about 2024, was that it was the rise of the archives, New Mexico's National UFO Historical Records Center, NUFO HRC, David Marler and company's new organization, UFO Records Archive, to move into Rio Rancho School. This was the first real press release announcing this partnership with the NUFO HRC and this Rio Rancho ISD, and includes local coverage of that. That's just fantastic. And, I really am so happy and excited for Marler and his fellow researchers. But of course, there's just been so much bad news about libraries fighting book bans. And so we also covered the TexasObserver.org's journalism on a small town Texas librarian's big stand against book bans. Just sad stories, so many places around the country where librarians are facing this kind of censorship and pushback from families that are just often very misinformed. But it just goes against everything I am for when it comes to giving access to information. Meanwhile, TechDirt.com reported on how 500,000 books had been deleted from the Internet Archive's lending library. Archive.org, of course, is one of the most important digital preservation institutions out there. Highly recommends them. I use them all the time. I give them money. They are a wonderful, wonderful resource. But they were forced to remove nearly 500,000 books from their open library that had been an effort to provide digital copies to people where you check it out, and while it's checked out, others can't check it out either. So it's like a real library. Meanwhile, speaking of AI ufologists, Isaac Coy, that pseudonymous ufologist from England, the alleged mystery barrister, continued scanning and uploading and creating his own ufology AI chatbots. Valet, Cameron, and other ufologist chatbots from Isaac Coy. He basically did the same kind of thing that you were just seeing is being done at that museum, trying to create a chatbot now without the vocal component. But very interesting. I definitely think there is value in this, but I also think we're already starting to see the fallout of people relying on AI assistance and AI search results. They can be very helpful, and I know that there already have been discoveries in many fields where artificial intelligence is being used to find information, find solutions to problems. It just, we got to exercise caution. That's all I'm saying. Meanwhile, the paranoia continues with Futurism.com reporting, oops, geoengineering trick to cool brutal heat could spike temperature elsewhere, scientists say. And this is just the same idea we express anytime we talk about the ideas of weather modification, that if you're making it rain one place where it wasn't already going to rain, you're taking that water from somewhere else. And ecology is a delicate balance, and it's easy to set things out of balance. And trying to modify the weather or do geoengineering is one of those real dangerous paths. But meanwhile, the dangers of belief. Belief is the enemy, as John Keel used to say. Police report suicide victim was fascinated with Skinwalker Ranch. This is just an example of reporting research from expandingfrontiersresearch.org, nonprofit headed by Erica Lukes and Jack Brewer and others. And they were, as usual, had their keen eye focused on the activities of Skinwalker Ranch and were sad to report on a apparent suicide of somebody who was fascinated with and obsessed with that area. And it's just a warning to all that, not to let your beliefs carry you away. And then also, we had a brief return of the mystery monoliths in June of last year. WashingtonPost.com headlines, remember the mysterious monoliths? A new one just appeared near Las Vegas. This was June 18th. And when I reported on this last year, of course, this reminded me of a number of things, including the earliest thing I can remember the monoliths reminded me of is the Art in America article from April 1998, cover article, Between Two Worlds. One of the founders of West Coast minimalism, John McCracken, has long been acclaimed for his flawlessly crafted geometric sculptures. These things basically look exactly like, or very similar to, those mystery monoliths that were appearing around the world. And there was that brief resurgence of at least one in June of last year. Okay, I can get to July of 2024. And there was this really good white paper that you can read over at the solfoundation.org website, Anomalous Health Threats, Health Security Considerations for UAP. This is an important paper, one of many being put out by the Sol Foundation over at thesolfoundation.org. And this one's on AHI, anomalous health incidents, or as they say here, anomalous health threats, health security considerations for UAP. And they open it by warning, that this is largely just speculative based on just a few cases. And of course, this dovetails with Havana syndrome and just other information that's come to light from case studies over the years of close encounters, the health effects on witnesses, as well as some actual scientific studies done by people like Gary Nolan and Kit Green that deal with the possible brain effects of close contact or encounters with this kind of phenomenon. Meanwhile, the arch skeptic Douglas Johnson over at douglasjohnson.ghost.io had this very detailed analysis of the UAP Disclosure Act. proposed Pentagon-era rewrite of the November 2023 Act. Of course, all that pretty much is not yet happening and has been largely rolled back in terms of scope. Don't know if we're going to get anything with teeth when it comes to these efforts of disclosure in the coming year. And still, we just keep getting these rumors of imminent UFO alien contact and disclosure, and not mentioned here, but these claims of briefings of Congress and certain people of a mystery object sighted by the James Webb Telescope. But Professor Simon Holland has, through his YouTube channel, was putting out a number of videos dealing with a alleged alien signal being found inside of data found by the SETI, the previous SETI at home data set. And one of the articles that he cited in his analyses that were ongoing over the course of months was this 2021 article from nature.com, analysis of the breakthrough listen signal of interest BLC1 with a technosignature verification framework. And it just, again, that this it is not that unusual in any given year for there to be, oh, now we think we might find microbe life on Mars or whatever. Oh, there's rumors in the UFO community of disclosure being imminent. But I don't know if I've had a previous year in all my decades of interest in this where there was such a snowballing of these little seeding of the idea that we are getting really close. I mean, obviously post 2017 and the revelation of the OSAP ATIP program and the obvious publicity campaign on the part of people like Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo and others, obviously that's going to ramp this all up. But it did seem that 2024, it was reaching almost a fever pitch from all angles. And it'll be very exciting if Professor Simon actually ends up having been the historic first person to have kind of started leaking out what, if what he is saying is true, that there are in fact good indications and that the revelation is being held back by the powers that be because they're just not ready yet to announce this. And this doesn't necessarily even have to do with the idea of a direct connection to UFOs and the idea of alien first contact in the way that we've been imagining it in terms of close encounters, but it would be historic, wouldn't it? Another loss to the Fortean paranormal community was Tony Doc Shields passed away. Wizard of the West, Tony Doc Shields. This person was a magician, a chaos magic person who was kind of an avant-garde artist as well. You've undoubtedly seen photos from him because some of his photographs were the ones that were the most popularized involving the Loch Ness monster. And the guy was apparently a very wild and crazy dude. Ah, yes, those famous photos. Now, on another example of bad ufology, bad ufologists, expandingfrontiersresearch.org yet again tracking the terrible crimes and the sentencing of Jan Harzan. A jury finds Harzan guilty. Of course, Jan Harzan was the head for quite some time of the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. And I would say that he was the head of it when it was at its worst, in my estimation, when it was succumbing to, and to some degree, I think it's still doing this, but it's not doing it as bad as it was under his leadership, so to speak. And that was that they just wanted to focus on publicity and media relations and were willing to have the worst element of ufology as the keynote speakers at their conferences, entertaining the worst kind of mythologizing when it comes to the UFO phenomenon. I'm not going to name names, but Perhaps it was all indicative of deeper issues with him, which were that he was apparently trying to solicit young girls on the internet. And that is how he was caught and arrested and convicted and has found guilty and sentenced for that activity. And EFR, Expanding Frontiers Research, has been tracking that. Of course, EFR has also been tracking similar bad behavior of believers, in this case, former security guard at Skinwalker Ranch. Fox 13 investigates, fox13now.com. Utah soldier discharged after domestic violence charges. This was a long time coming. This person was an abuser of Erica Luke's, and it took forever for them to finally take action against him. In happier news, newscentermaine.com reports, was that a UFO? Massive collection of reports and sightings finds a new home. Strangely, this was a Maine news source writing about the UFO, the National UFO Historical Records Center in New Mexico. So they, like I said, this past year, they got a lot of press as they rolled out their new archive location there at the Rio Rancho ISD. Again, just so happy for them. They've got such a great collection, and keep it up, guys. And then that same month, we had the largest IT outage in history, leaving the world reeling. That's a weird Austin connection. CrowdStrike, headquartered here in Austin, Texas, technical error led to this world-shaking IT event. I still just can't believe this kind of thing. Austin just has it's the epicenter of so much weirdness. It's also in July, of course, was what I call the near-miss assassination attempt against Trump and near-miss meteor strike over New York City. I tried to articulate, and probably didn't do it very well in the show in July, where I reported on these headlines from like the Economic Times, IndiaTimes.com, Statue of Liberty-sized asteroid. Statue of Liberty-sized asteroid zooms toward Earth at breakneck speed. NASA issues warning. And then other headlines, meteor streaks through sky over Statue of Liberty in New York City. Videos show fireball amid reports of boom and shaking. That one from CBSNews.com. This all happened in the days before and after the assassination attempt against Trump. And I don't know, it just struck me as a weird synchronicity. That's all. Not going to put any more energy into that. But yet again, that same month, more headlines indicating the idea that we could be told that there is alien life out there in our solar system. USAtoday.com reports this Mars rock could show evidence of life. Here's what Perseverance rover found. And we just, again, time and time again, we're getting more and more information that seems to lead towards soon there could be a revelation that we have discovered life. And first it'll be, microbial life. Then it'll be, oh, wait, these little critters. Oh, wait, there's these bigger critters that eat the little critters. Oh, and they're sentient. And by the way, they're in craft and they're coming here. And we hope they don't eat us. So moving right along to August 2024, enormous hidden ocean discovered under Mars could contain life. This one from livescience.com. Again, there's more of that. Another big thing that took the media waves by storm last year were the growing rumors of an Austin, Texas serial killer. I've created a page on the Anomaly Archives website about Austin, Texas serial killers. Of course, again, Austin is allegedly the home of the very first North American serial killer, the servant girl annihilator, as the killer or killers were called, is a fascinating and disturbing tale of murder and mayhem here in the heart of Texas, here in Austin. But more recently, there have been all these deaths associated with Town Lake, aka Lady Bird Lake, that involve mostly a certain age bracket of men. And of course, the mainstream explanation is that they get drunk And usually, if say 6th Street or the Rainy Street district, and the Rainy Street district leads right to the river, and that they are drunk and they fall in, hit their heads, and drown. But there's other cases mixed in with this, and some that don't fit quite that same case, and some that go back much further. But we're talking about a lot of deaths, and as some of the video documentarians say, it's just like something about this lake seems more dangerous than others. And I'm afraid to say that I think there probably are more serial killers in the world than any of us wants to admit. But I also think it's quite possible that there's a down-to-earth explanation for, sadly, this many deaths. Another sad passing, Obituary, Anomalistics, and Frontier Science. The SSE, Society for Scientific Exploration, that's scientificexploration.org/news. Peter Andrew Sturrock passed away. He was born in 1924 and passed away in 2024. As the obituary says here, founding president of the SSE, passed away peacefully in his home, surrounded by his friends and family on August 12th, 2024, at the age of 100. Peter was a leader among those rare scientists who made major contributions in both conventional and non-conventional science. On the conventional side, Sturrock was known worldwide for his profound contributions to the fields of astrophysics, plasma physics, and solar research. He continued that work until the very end of his life as a distinguished physicist and emeritus professor at Stanford University. On the less conventional side and more controversial side, Peter, along with peers such as the late Bob Jahn, was among the visionary founders of the SSE, Society for Scientific Exploration. So he also was kind of a mentor to Jacques Vallée. Most people tend to think of J. Allen Hynek as being Jacques' most obvious ufological mentor. And I'm obviously Mr. Vallée, Dr. Vallée has had several mentors, but I believe Peter Sturrock was also one of them. It seems like from reading his journals, all 5 of them, that there's always positive things and remembrances of his friend Peter Sturrock. So, okay. And then, of course, there was the summer 2024 conference for Varieties and Trajectories of Contemporary UAP Studies, brought to us by SUAPS, the Society for UAP Studies. And of course, Greg Bishop and I had a talk about that to review it afterwards. Greg was in attendance there, and we got to get his impressions of the conference. You can go and watch that review with Greg and I. Meanwhile, what if we were no longer alone in the universe? Again, this is article it's in a different language. Hopefully your browser will translate it for you. I'm not sure how you pronounce this. Cidehome, CIDEHOM.com. This is Simon Holland getting some PR for all that news reporting that he was doing about, as I say, the SETI signals and the possibility that there has in fact been a alien technosignature found. This is just some of the limited PR covering his efforts to publicize that possible discovery. But of course, this is also the month when Lou Elizondo's book Imminent was leaked right before its release. And so we all got a sneak preview of that and let the screaming begin. Okay, well, before we round out this evening, thank you for sticking with us, and thank you for subscribing to our podcast and staying abreast of the Anomaly Archives activities. Again, you can go to patreon.com/Anomaly Archives. There are some silly videos that you can watch that we'll post the links to. Cloudy with a Chance of Meat. Kentucky town embracing the unusual history of the meat shower. This is one of those strange Fortean cases, but it's so fun and silly. And yeah, so apparently some of the meat, quote unquote, whatever the heck it was that fell from the sky all those decades ago, has been preserved by this very strange museum there in Kentucky. And thank goodness for strange museums and strange libraries everywhere. Lastly, as I've already mentioned, Jesse Michaels' American Alchemy podcast has a new interview with a fellow named Randy Anderson talking about his possible brush with secret off-world technology programs in the U.S. military. But a few months back, he interviewed the Paradigm Institute's Danny Sheehan. The title, "The Man Involved in Every American Conspiracy," is not kidding. Danny Sheehan is a national treasure. He seems to be a real life do-gooder lawyer trying to fight for the people and trying to fight for civil liberties and for transparency in government and trying to do good things in the world, and has been at the center of so many different conspiracies, whether it's the Iran-Contra scandal, the UFO phenomenon, weird remote viewing information. I mean, it's a very long interview. I highly recommend you check it out. Not endorsing everything he says. I never endorse anything anybody says, even people like Jacques Vallée, who I respect dearly, but you might find it very interesting and enlightening. Well, that's going to probably be it. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. What are my thoughts on this mystery fog? I haven't done any research into that specifically, but, my first thoughts are it's probably like so many other things that the people posting about it are likely haven't done their due diligence and done the basic research to even figure out whether the fog is truly anomalous. It's, as I just heard the QAnon Anonymous podcasters saying in a recent episode, this mystery fog is a symbolic representation of the mental fog that our country is engulfed in terms of its descent into madness, its descent into uncritical thinking. But I got to say, there's been some foggy days here in Austin, Texas, here in my home in South Austin, after I started seeing posts about that. So it's been weird to have been reading about mystery fog around the country and look out the window and there some is. So sorry I don't have any more insights than that on the mystery fog. But thank you all for listening. I really appreciate you sticking with us. And anything you can do to help, we greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you soon. We won't be doing the live show at 7:00 this time next week because we'll be hosting the Patreon monthly Anomaly Academy Cadet tier accessible presentation by Chris Rutkowski, Abduction Transduction. But we may put out part 3, hopefully the concluding part to the year-end review before that, but no guarantees. Got a lot going on, but thank you all for tuning in and good night.